Well, welcome everybody. We have about 80 folks so far signed on, so that's a good number. We're going to start off and go over our first fully virtual parent information meeting. I guess we had one a few years back that was semi-virtual when we had some really bad weather, but this one will be a little bit different. So, as usual, we're going to kind of go over the basics of club volleyball. The topic on everybody's mind these days is all the COVID impacts associated with club volleyball and the rest of the world. Go over tryouts, the expectations and policies, the heat, and some things that are new this season. Somewhere on your Zoom, you probably get to see this little Q&A thing. This little Q&A button shows up somewhere. So if you have any questions, they are encouraged. As you heard Connie, she's on the line and she's going to monitor the Q&A. So feel free to put questions in there. We have a spot kind of towards the middle where we'll take questions. And we'll have her ask the ones that she didn't just answer in line. And we'll also have a spot at the end for questions as well. So just type them in as you got them. And if we don't go over them, we'll have Connie ask them later on. So the real basics, what is club volleyball and who is the Heat? So club volleyball is a chance to play in competitive tournaments and get advanced training, often that's beyond what you'll see in the middle schools or high school areas. It prepares players for the next school season, and at higher levels yet to be seen by college coaches. Almost all volleyball scholarships come from club volleyball, not from high school, because the coaches, that's where they go to recruit the best players. The CSRA Heat is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a member of USA Volleyball and the Palmetto Volleyball Association. As well as volleyball, we believe in building life skills, teaching responsibility, communication, leadership, teamwork. One of the things that I love the most, I think, about the Heat is that it really does become a family over the course of each season. The coaches all bond together, the parents bond together. It's fun to see that there are sometimes lifelong friendships made, not just among the players, but between the families that get used to seeing each other at tournaments all season long. So what's the time commitment? Generally speaking, there are 2 to 3 practices a week, depending upon the team level, usually 1 or 2 weeknights and a Sunday afternoon practice. Tournaments start in early January and are roughly every other weekend until April. And that holds pretty much true for all levels. The 12s and 13s usually start a little bit later in the season. They start kind of mid-January when they're a little bit more ready. So our coaches, what do we expect out of our coaches? Well, here at the Heat, we believe in positive coaching. We think you get more from positive reinforcement than you do from being a screamer or a clipboard thrower. We have a lot of experienced coaches, and we have several coming back, and we believe in coach training. We mentor our young coaches. We encourage folks to take coaching clinics, and we put 2 coaches per team so that we have both the ability to train up and coming coaches and to give multiple perspectives as they see the players on the team. So it's never just one person's decision. Well, the elephant in the room is the COVID-19 impacts on the season. If you were a member of USAV last year, or if you've registered already for tryouts and done your USAV registration, you've probably seen the emails from Jimmy Payton, who's the commissioner of the Palmetto region. The club directors and tournament hosts have been working, and the Palmetto administration have been working all summer to try and make sure we can have a season if it's possible. There still are significant uncertainties with the tournaments and the season. Really, it's just we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We don't know what's going to be allowed, how big a gatherings places will be allowed to have. So one of the key things is a few of the highlights, and I strongly encourage you to go out to the Palmetto website and read their COVID policy. And also I'll go over the heats and encourage you to go look at ours as well. There's not going to be any ticket sales at the event. It's all going to be pre-orders only, and it'll all be individual pre-orders. So you'll order all your tickets online. Limited attendance is likely for some events, and we don't really know which ones they will be and which divisions they will be until we get closer to the event. These are being determined by the facilities that we're using for the tournaments. Some are placing restrictions on the total number of people that can be in the building at any time. They're following state and local guidelines, so you may only be allowed 20-25% of your normal capacity. So some divisions, as you see here, may play Sundays for single-day tournaments. So a lot of our club tournaments, club division tournaments, are single day. So they usually happen, they start a Saturday morning and they end Saturday evening. Because we expect to have some challenges getting some facilities that we normally would, high schools in South Carolina are especially difficult to rent right now. And quite frankly, we're seeing the same thing here in Georgia. So it is quite conceivable that some of the club tournaments will have some divisions on Saturday and other divisions on Sunday. And hopefully we will know that earlier rather than later, which ones those are. And there's also a lot of changes that have been made to the protocols surrounding the match. So in order to limit the number of people around the stands in places where we are allowed to have lots of attendees, if your team is not playing, everyone is going to be expected, the parents and the players, to leave that court area and go somewhere else. Hopefully some of these places will have some larger space gathering areas. It may be outside in good weather, and in some cases, it may be just waiting in your cars. And I know that's not exactly what we want, but that's kind of the world we live in. And it's important that everybody understands what those restrictions are likely to be. As far as the CSRA heat goes, we have a tryout COVID policy, we have our COVID policies and procedures, and we have written COVID-19 refund policies. And you can see them on the website. If you go, it'll show you that there's if you go to csraheat.com and hit tryouts and scroll down to forms and documents, you'll see all of these or links to them. All of these documents are available. We strongly encourage you to read them. There's lots of good information in there about what our expectations are. If a player or family fails to follow the protocols or procedures, they can be subject to suspension or expulsion from the heat and from the Palmetto region. So know what you're getting yourself into, and no credits or reimbursements will be provided to players or families who fail to follow the protocols put in place by the heat, our associated facilities, governing bodies, tournament hosts, etc. In order to make the season work, we're all going to have to follow the rules that are laid out. A few of our highlights from the heat policies: we're attempting to follow the CDC rules, the USAV rules, the PVA rules, the Georgia Department of Public Health rules, the South Carolina DHEC rules. We've put together what we think is a fairly solid policy. Always welcome more input from qualified individuals. Some of the highlights are: we're requiring mask use for entering facilities and when not playing by everyone who comes into a facility. We are going to be doing daily temperature checks for players and coaches before you're allowed to come into a practice, a tournament. There are mandatory quarantines laid out for players and family members if you are in close contact or if you have had a positive test. We will be disinfecting equipment after every practice. There's an assumption of risk and liability waiver that's also attached to our policies that you'll be asked to sign as part of accepting your position on a team. It's also very likely that we will not be able to allow to have parents at practices. this season, just because we want to limit, first off, we want to limit the number of attendees. That's just good practice right now. And we also don't want to be the mask and social distancing police. It's important to be said, once again, these policies are being put in place by us, by the region, by USA Volleyball, in order to try and have a season. It's important to us to follow them. We don't want to be the COVID police. And I think about the only way to say it really bluntly is, if you don't plan on following these policies, don't try out. We want everybody to be there. We want everybody to play, but it is really important. The situation is likely to change during the season. Everyone needs to be flexible. Honesty and transparency about your health situations and your exposures is mandatory. And regardless of anyone's personal political beliefs regarding COVID, you have to agree to follow these rules in order to be able to participate. So tryouts. So the logistics of tryouts are that they'll be held October 24th and 25th. That's this Saturday and Sunday for middle school ages, 12s, 13s, and 14s. And October 31st and November 1st for the high school ages, 15, 16, 17s, and 18s. And it'll all be at the Augusta Prep gyms. Tryout times are on the website, and you'll see them when you register. There's a $35 tryout fee. This year, we're doing everything online. So we are a paperless process this year. That's partially due to COVID, because nobody wants to handle a whole bunch of paper that everyone and also that some hundreds of people have handled. And it's part just because it helps us be more efficient. You have to register with USAV before tryouts, and register by going to CSRA.com and clicking on the registration link. And it has a step-by-step. Step 1, read the COVID policy. Step 2, register with USAV. Step 3, register for the heat. And step 4, if you're trying out for other clubs, go fill out the multi-club disclosure form. The 2 registrations you have to do are with the heat and USAV, and they have to be done online in advance. We will not be walking anyone through registration at the door this year. We request you show up 30 minutes before your assigned time for tryouts. That'll give us time to get everybody's temp, check everybody in, take photos, give t-shirts, etc. So what to bring to tryouts? Bring your proof of your heat tryout registration and your USAV membership card or proof of membership. There's a web link here at CSRA Heat under tryouts. There is a new link we just added. It's tryout verification, which walks you through how to get your USAV information and how to get your CSRA Heat tryout registration. So there's no questions when you walk up. Bring a water bottle. That's one of our policies this year. There's absolutely no sharing of water bottles. And we won't know what the water fountain situation is in any facility. Shoes, shorts, socks, and knee pads. We recommend ankle supports if you've got them. We will once again supply tryout t-shirts based on the size you selected when you registered. So when you approach tryouts, this is important. So when you show up to tryouts, approach check-in. It may well be outside the glass doors at prep if it's a nice day. To check in, just show your online USAV registration, your CSRA Heat registration. We'll check you off the list. We'll have someone take your temperature. We'll send you inside to get your t-shirt. You'll enter gym. You'll get a photo taken. And as I said, we're not going to allow any parents to observe this year. It's both, well, it's really just to limit the exposure to everyone. So it'll be drop them off and come back if it's a 10 to 12, come back at a little before 12 to pick everybody up, and we'll send them out send them out the doors when they're done. We do need a few volunteers this year to help check people in, hand out shirts, things like that. Normally I just find somebody who's unsuspecting and nab them and say, hey, will you mind helping handing out t-shirts? But we have to plan a little bit more ahead this year. So If you are interested, we could use your help. Please send an email to director@csraheat.com, and we'll see we'll find a way to put you to work for 3 or 4 folks for each time slot. So one of the biggest questions this year is the new age definitions. So USA Volleyball decided this year, the age had always been defined by how old you were on September 1st of next year. Well, they changed it. So now your age is decided by how old you are as of July 1st of next year. So if you have a July or August birthday, you are now eligible to play in the same age group that you played in last year. So if you were a 15 last year and you had an August birthday, you're still a 15 this year. That's going to create a little bit of confusion and probably a little bit of consternation. So here's the Heat policy about playing on your school grade versus your age. Right. We always recommend that you try out in your defined age group for your best opportunity to make a team and to play at the highest level. So if you're a 15, we recommend you try out at 15s. However, we understand, if you want to play at your school grade, which if you're a 9th grader and you want to play 15s, we understand there's going to be a lot of people that want to make that decision. So we're going to allow you to make that decision. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. So what do we expect to happen at tryouts? Well, we'll go through individual drills and team drills. Multiple coaches will evaluate you. At least 8 to 10 is what you should expect. We'll be evaluating all the players on passing, setting, serving, hitting, blocking, teamwork, communication, coachability, court sense. We'll be watching you from the moment you walk up to check in until the moment you leave the gym. We're going to conduct tryouts socially distanced as much as possible, much as reasonably possible. When you come in, we'll have everybody set down their minimal bags that they might have. Distanced apart. We'll keep folks apart as best we can, but this is volleyball. There's going to be people next to each other on the court. The last note on here is we're not going to do uniform try-on at tryouts this season. Just looking at it, it just seems like a bad idea in this COVID world. So what we're going to do is we're planning on having several girls that played with us last year. We're going to get pictures of them in their uniforms and tell you what size these are and give you a little bit of information so you get a little bit of a visualization. We'll also have the measurements from Mizuno to go off of. And a week or so or a few days after you have accepted your position on your team, we're going to ask everyone to determine whether or not they need another uniform this year, and if so, what size they want. So how do we go about assigning teams? Our philosophy is we want to put competitive teams on the floor that allow players to grow and improve during the season. Ideally, we found that's 10 girls per team. We may decide to put 11 or maybe even 12 on a team this year, depending, just because we anticipate the problem of potentially having some players quarantined or kept out of the team for a week or two at a time. So we don't want to be putting 8-player teams together this year like we have at some time in the past. We also follow all the restrictions from all the Georgia high school, South Carolina high school on how we assign coaches. So if we have somebody that's coaching at one of the local high schools and is going to be a Heat coach, we make sure everybody stays eligible. And then, of course, the skills, the position needs, physical ability, passing, setting, serving, mental ability, hustle, teamwork and effort, attitude, sportsmanship. Are you encouraging? Are you positive? Previous club experience, the age you are relative to the team, and the team composition, and overall volleyball ability. So we're looking at everything associated with the players as we form the teams, but there does have to be a good skill mix of players on the team as well. Much as we'd like to have a team with 12 middles, it's probably not a good plan. You need some people who are primary passers and some people who are primary setters. So how are you notified of results? Well, we email them to you. And we'll also email you instructions to accept your position on the team. So to accept your position on the team or to decline it, follow the instructions on the email, pay your acceptance fee, accept the player-parent contract, and the COVID waivers. All that, by the way, as I mentioned, is currently available on the website. So you can go look at it now, and we really want you to do that and be aware of what the season's looking like and what all the policies are. The decision days here are for 14 or younger is Tuesday, November 3rd. So a little bit over a week after our tryouts is the Palmetto decision day. So the signing day for everybody to make a decision if you try out for multiple clubs. For 15 and older, you'll notice it's Monday, November 16th, which is it's 2 weeks after our tryouts. The reason for that is the Palmetto tryout dates are actually a week later. They start a week later than we're holding our tryouts this year. We got a special dispensation to move ours up a week earlier because when all these decisions were being made about when tryouts were going to be, Masters was still happening and we were still having patrons and schools were still on vacation that week of that second week in November. And when they changed and reduced, and they said we weren't going to have patrons, and the schools decided they weren't going to give everybody time off for that week, we decided there's going to be too many conflicts. We know the Augusta area, there's going to be people who aren't around anyway during those weekends because they'd already had plans. And so we talked to the Palmetto region. We kept our tryout dates of the 31st and 1st of November, but to give everybody an opportunity, if they want to try out for other clubs, we're keeping the same signing date as the rest of the region. All right, one important thing to talk about is the number of teams we expect this season. So in the past, it's been normal for us to have 13, 14, 15 teams associated with the CSRA Heat. This year, we expect that number to be somewhere around 10. And that's due to facility limitations and coach limitations. So, because of COVID and other things, there are people who are not as willing to coach this year. And facilities, especially public schools and things like that, are much tougher to come by. So due to those limitations, we're expecting to offer about 10 teams. What that means is there are going to be fewer spots offered to players than there have been in the past. So it's much more likely that we will be cutting players than it has been in past years. And I would just say to keep that in mind as you're deciding if you are one of these people who can try out for multiple age groups. Do some self-evaluation and make a decision as to which group you would, if you still strongly prefer to play in the older age group, go ahead and make that decision, but understand that we won't penalize you, certainly, for trying out there, but the competition may be tougher. So levels of play, those are always kind of the first base questions, which are, what's the difference between a club team and a power team? Well, the club team's playing about 6, 7, 8 tournaments, mostly around the state of South Carolina. The Palmetto region has club divisions and power divisions and sometimes open division tournaments. The club is the lower division, and so our club teams play in that division, so they're playing kids of equal talent. They practice twice a week. The power and national qualifying teams are the highest level that we offer. So they play in the power divisions, the higher divisions, and sometimes the open division at tournaments. And we'll register them for at least one national qualifier for Big South, most likely in Atlanta. They practice 3 times a week. In the past, that one of those has been a power workout. This year, that is unlikely given the COVID environment. So it'll probably be more on the order of 3 team practices per week. We're still working through those details, but some of the things we've done in the past where we've had 80 kids and 2 gyms for the power workouts is not going to be something we want to do, and mixing and mingling all the kids. So the differences between the levels are the practice time, the levels of play, and the amount of travel. And for the national teams, those are teams that will continue on the season. They'll either go for a bid from USA Volleyball to play in the USAV Nationals, or they'll go down to Orlando to compete in the AAU Nationals. And those tournaments happen in July and June. And so they play an extended season. And that's the difference between the national and the power as well. In the parent information packet, I think it goes into a little bit more detail and says that given where we are right now, we're going to make a decision. We want to know what your interest is, and we'll make teams accordingly. So if you want to play on a national team, we want to put together a national team for those players. And we'll evaluate where we are in January and where the world is to make sure that that's something that can still happen. So local teams and our winter skills clinics, we still very strongly believe in our local traveling teams. This is an option we've had for 3 or 4 years now, where it's a slightly less travel. So you do about 4 tournaments, and they're all local-ish, so they're day trip kind of things. With our restrictions on the number of teams that we're going to have this year, we couldn't see offering the local only option, especially the way some of the tournaments schedules are being laid out this year. The winter skills clinics, we're going to evaluate and make a decision by early December, whether or not we can hold those based on facility availability and, once again, where COVID is in the world. These are no tryout required clinics. The skills vary from 3rd graders learning the basics to high school varsity. We generally run this on 3 or 4 nets. And as I said, we're going to have to make some decisions based on what availability we have and what the possibilities are of holding the clinics. So that takes us to our first set of questions. So if you've had any, hopefully Connie's been keeping track of them. I'm going to get a sip of water and let her ask a couple of questions or bring a couple of questions up for us.
Okay, just checking. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I do have a couple. The first one, if there are siblings, can the younger sibling try out and play up?
So the answer is yes. We will, we always, as I say, we always encourage you to try out at your age group if you can. If you have a family limitation that says that you really can't make that happen, please let us know. There's a notes area on the tryout registration. Put a note to that effect, and just make sure we know what the situation is so we can help you make the best decision.
Okay. The next one, some people wanted clarification. For instance, can girls with the age change, can girls try out for 2 different age groups?
I think the answer is going to be yes for now, as long as we can manage it. So please let us know that that's your intent. If that's your intent, sign up for the younger age group and annotate that you'd like to be considered for the older team as well. If you're a 14/15, that will be significantly more challenging because we may not have decisions made about the 15s teams by the time the 14s will have to make decisions about accepting their spots. So let us know what your intentions are, and we'll work with you as best we can.
Okay, the next one, which kind of goes along the age group thing, are you allowed to change your age group after you have registered?
I believe the answer to that is yes. And I think I've actually got a slide later on that shows you some things about the registration. But if you go back into your Sports Engine account, I believe you can actually look up your registration click on it, and there's a little pencil in the upper right-hand corner that you can go actually edit some of the information. Give that a try. If that doesn't work for you, shoot us an email at director@csraheat.com, and I know I can go change it for you. I just prefer that you tried first.
That's all I have here. I have some for people to know. I do have some questions that I'm going to answer privately because it pertains to just one person, but those seem to be the ones that several people were asking.
Okay, sounds good. And there's probably some questions that I'm glancing at here that are coming in that may be answered as we move on through. And we'll certainly have another question piece at the end. So if your question wasn't answered, please ask another. Okay, so the fun stuff. Let's talk about things like playing time and positions and grievances. So playing time, our philosophy on playing time is not everyone gets equal playing time. It's earned, it's not award, it's not given. With that said, it's our intent that every girl is going to get some playing time in every match as long as their dues are current, they've been to practice, they're not injured, and they're not being disciplined for some reason or other. We do have great coaches, and we allow them to make decisions to do what's best for the team as a whole. Now, there's occasionally a match that might be so important that it requires that only the strongest players play on the floor, but that should be the exception, not the rule. And just stay in communication with us, with the coaches, if that does turn out to be a problem. What position will you play? This is always kind of one of the big questions, and the answer really is whatever is needed by your team. I've seen people who played setter for us that then went on and played middle and for their high school, or have played setter and libero and swapped back and forth. One club season they played setter, then they played libero for high school, then they played libero for club, and then they played setter for high school. So it's not necessarily what your high school coach expects you to play the next year. It's what's needed for the team. You have to enter into club volleyball understanding that club teams are formed from the best players in the area, and your role on a club team may be different than what it is on your school team. Connie, I can hear you typing.
Oops, I better mute.
So let's talk a little bit about grievance policy. It's outlined in the player-parent contract. We don't expect a whole lot of grievances. There'll be a couple over the course of the season. Here's how we'd like to approach it. If there's an issue that the player has or that you have with the player and the coach, especially at 15 and up, we want that athlete to set up a meeting with the coach herself first. That's part of this developing responsibility and accountability. And really, it's an important skill that club volleyball gives these players a lot of times, is the ability to have some difficult conversations with adults and people in authority that aren't their parents. And it's a great opportunity for them. If it's not resolved after the athlete talks to a coach, the parent can set up a meeting between themselves and the coaching staff to discuss the issue. We can do those virtually, or we can do those in person, right? But it should take place at a location that's considered adequate for a private discussion, and it should not be at a tournament or in place of a practice. There's no reason to pull the coach out of practice, away from all 10 girls that they should be in there working with, to talk about the issues that one player or their parents may be having. We want to have those conversations. We encourage you to have those conversations early rather than later in the season when change can be made. Just not in the heat of the moment or in practice or at a tournament. If the issue is unresolved, the parent can certainly ask for a meeting with the club director, the coach, the head coach, and we'll schedule a time away from a practice or a tournament as appropriate. So to summarize, when should you approach a coach about grievances, problems, coaching suggestions? Don't do it during a tournament. Our coaches are just as competitive as you are, and they're usually at least as upset about the outcome of a match, whether they're showing it to the kids outwardly or not. Not during a practice. Let's let them coach during practice time. So please set up a prearranged meeting, phone call, or email exchange. And on that topic, the CSRA has a 24-hour rule. So what we would really like is that if you have a matter that's related to a specific incident, a match, an event, the parents and the athletes must wait 24 hours after that before contacting the coach to schedule a meeting. That even means, draft the email you'd like to send if you want to. Don't put anything in the to. Save it in the draft. Wait till tomorrow night to send it. It's amazing the clarity that can bring. Our coaches are very competitive too. It gives everybody a chance to cool their heels and give everybody a chance to be objective so we can have more positive outcomes to the conversation. It's important to have the conversations. It's also important to strive towards positive outcomes from them. And we don't want everybody on the defensive. The region has a no tolerance policy, a zero tolerance policy regarding parents or any other spectators arguing with referees or even approaching referees or tournament directors during a tournament. You can be removed from the gym on a first offense. It does happen every year. The club can be fined. The team can be sanctioned from participating in future tournaments. Just don't do it. These are oftentimes, kids officiating, coaches who don't want to be R2ing or doing the R2 duties. Give them the space. If there's issues that you see, talk to the coach, get your coach's attention, have them go talk to the ref, have them go talk to the tournament director. It really helps everything go so much smoother. So the costs, I think we had one question coming in. They're very similar to last season. They're available on the website. There's a parent information sheet that has this information and much more. That this is just a little quick screen grab from. As I said, it's very similar to last season. And the difference between the Power and the National Qualifier teams, we'll look at that in January and make a decision whether or not we think that we're going to be doing the extended season, going to AEUs or USAV nationals, and look at that adder for that extra 3 or 4 months of practice and 2 or 3 more tournaments, plus the national tournament. So what if you play another sport, or you sing in the opera, or you're taking the SAT, or you want to go to the prom, and you still want to play club volleyball? Can you do that? No, the answer is yes, you can. We want to make the club volleyball something that you want to do, not something that you have to do, right? Most of our coaches, we encourage them to have rules regarding girls notifying them before missing practices. And if they don't, that can result in reduced playing times. If you have conflicts with tournaments, we need to know that early. That's why we put that on the registration for tryouts. There's financial liability to the club, to the team, that we wind up having to pass back on to the parents. We don't want to do that, especially this season where we expect to have limited entries into tournaments. It could be very challenging to get things rescheduled or find another date. If you're playing on a Power National Qualifier team, national team, we do expect this to be your primary activity outside of school. All right, team parents. Team parents are a great thing. We need to have team parents. They offload the coaches. Generally, they help coordinate travel to tournaments with other parents. They help coordinate the food at the tournaments if we can have that. And there is a policy out there on the Palmetto side about what we're planning for food tables this year, if they're in the places where they're allowed, which is basically no open food, prepackaged things, yes, or pre-wrapped or something like that, but nobody dipping their hands into the M&Ms and sharing food. Anything that lets the coaches focus on volleyball and communicate with the coach about what they need help with. We're still trying to figure out all the COVID-19 impacts on the team parent responsibilities. I'm sure there will be some, right? We'll have a team parent meeting in December for idea sharing, best practices. We've been doing that for several years. It's very good. We may do it virtually this year just to aid things. So we host a couple tournaments. Our dates are February 27th and potentially the Sunday, the 28th in Augusta for the club tournament. And then, oh, that's wrong. It's March 6th and 7th, not 26th, 27th. So the next weekend is a two-day power tournament that we're hosting in Rock Hill. And the region is using the Rock Hill facility. For those of you who played last year, most of you got to attend at least one tournament there. It's a great facility. It's got 17 courts. It's substantially with a lot of space, which makes it not have the same problems with attendance limitation as some other facilities. And it makes it a lot easier to put on a tournament than trying to run around and set up 15 different gyms like we do in the Augusta area when we run. So our tournament, once again, will be the power tournament will be a two-day power tournament up in Rock Hill. For the club tournament, we always need help in the setup, takedown, and the running of the tournament, especially a few people with trucks to help move equipment around before and after. Rock Hill should be a lot easier from that perspective, but we'll probably need some people checking tickets at the door and things like that over the course of the day. So we'll need some help there as well. And our parents always do a great job in helping out, and it is always greatly appreciated. And I'm sure you'll continue to do so. We've been running a sponsorship. So we've been running a sponsorship program for years. And generally we give at least 80% of anything that you collect as a sponsor for the Heat directly back to the player dues. For a $100 donation, they get their name on the warm-up t-shirt, $100 or more, I believe, that we wear at all the tournaments. There are options up to the full sponsorship of a player. If you haven't noticed, we transferred our website this year. So we've got a couple things that we're still moving. The sponsorship information is one of those. It'll be transferred over probably in the next few days to the next week. We always get asked if there's other fundraisers we can do. And the answer is yes. If you're willing to help out and lead it, we're willing to lend our name to it and do it. But generally speaking, our administration and coaches are pretty tied up getting the season going with tryouts and tournament registrations and uniform ordering and distribution and everything associated with the startup of the club season. So we would definitely need parent volunteers to take anything else on. One of the key things about club volleyball is the information flow, and being available for contact is very important to your team parent, to the coaches, to the club. One of the things that you'll notice in your Sports Engine account, which is what the CSRA Heat is. CSRA Heat and USA Volleyball are both using now. And really that was part of the impetus for us to move to Sports Engine this year for our registration process, is because hopefully it is easier to do both USAV and CSRA Heat registrations, because it's supposed to be saving information between the two registrations because it's already in your account. And that will continue for several years. USA Volleyball plans on doing that. However, in your settings, when you log into your Sports Engine account, there's a settings button down here. It's important that you go into the CSRA Heat Volleyball Club once you accept the position there, and accept that your email addresses can get emails and that your phone can get texts from the heat. We expect to have to, at some point this season, get some pretty rapid information out, and we're going to be using all possible means to do that. And this is one of them. And as I mentioned earlier, once you log back into your Sports Engine account, there's also this registrations button right here. If you click on that, that's where you should be able to see your registration. And you can probably go back in there, I believe, and edit that registration. And if not, as I said, if there's any information you need to add, just email it to us and we'll add it in. I always like to kind of close the presentation with the job of the coach and the job of the parent. I've been a parent of a player. I've been a coach. Separating those two can be difficult. I was fortunate enough, or I should say my daughter was fortunate enough to never have me as a coach. But let the coaches be the coach. Let them provide the feedback, the negative feedback when it's necessary, the technique feedback. The job of the parent in club volleyball, just support your girls. Be their biggest cheerleader, not their biggest critic. They know what went wrong on that ride home from a tournament after a long day. They don't need you to go over, them shanking a pass at a key moment, or why'd you miss your serve, or, they're looking to you to be their cheerleader. Their coaches are going to work on all the skills that they need to get better the next week, including both physical and mental. We're looking forward to a very exciting year. We appreciate your interest and your flexibility. And that's really the end of the presentation. So Connie, you can unmute yourself again.
Okay. We do have a few questions.
Okay.
For everyone to hear. This was asked by several people about the number of teams we're going to have.
Right.
12s and 13s and
at all the different ages.
All the different ages.
So our working plan right now, and we're still finalizing that number that's right around 10, would be to have roughly 4 to 5 teams between 12s, 13s, and 14s, and to have 5 or 6 teams between 15, 16, 17s, and 18s. It may even be the situation that we offer 4 teams at 12s, 13s, and 14s, and then come back after the 15s tryouts, if 15, 16, 17s tryouts, if we see some low numbers and we have enough people for we don't have enough people to make the third 15s team, but we do have enough to make a third 14s team. We'll go back and reoffer it. So we really are, we have a plan in place, and we are trying to remain flexible as well based on what we see at tryouts.
Okay. Can we find out the coaches for the teams that we're trying out for?
The answer to that will be, you will always have coaches assigned when you are assigned to a team. We like to assign the players and then the coaches. We will have a working plan in place before we start tryouts this year, which is a little bit different. We always have a skeleton for the top teams, and we probably will have that as well for this year. But we will have some degree of flexibility, because until we actually see who's at tryouts, we don't know if we're going to have 2 12s teams, a 13 team, and 1 14 team, or the other way around. So we really can't assign all the coaches to all the teams first.
Okay. And I'll kind of, I guess, answer this while I'm asking the question, because the question was, can girls come to both days of tryouts? And I answered this for everyone to see that the girls should come to both days. But if you want to reiterate that.
Yes, I would like to reiterate that. So at the CSRA heat tryouts, we break it down. The first day is often a basic skills evaluation and the first cut at who the top players are and what all the decision points we need to make at the second day of tryouts. So it's really important to us that you attend both days if possible, and that you communicate to us if for some reason you cannot. Especially if you attend the first day and don't attend the second day, we'd really like to know why, so we don't just assume that you decided you didn't want to play.
Okay. Is there a list of tournaments yet that the Heat is participating in?
So we haven't put this up on the website yet. In general, the teams are going to play a pretty standard Palmetto region schedule. So if you go out to the Palmetto region website and you look at the girls tournaments, that'll be pretty close. It'll be up by later this week, probably by Thursday. And we will, but we are still working on, say for some of the national teams, we are still working on what their schedule will be. It's a little more challenging this year, quite frankly, because I think we know what's happening in the Palmetto region, but some of the tournaments that we've played in past years, Georgia may have different restrictions than South Carolina, fewer, more. So playing in the First Lady Classic may be different, or playing in Queen City Classic may be different. And so we'll evaluate each one of those on a case-by-case basis, but we're actively working that right now.
Okay. I think this is one of the last one. Well, I still have some coming up, but
It's all right. We'll keep
do we-
answering.
okay. Do they pick if they're trying out for a region or a power team, or do we just choose for them?
So on the tryout, when you register for tryouts, it asks you which level teams you are interested in trying out for, and it's check boxes. So the intent is that if you are willing to be on a national team, a power team, a club team, you'll check all the boxes. If you're only willing to be on a club team, then only check the club box. Now, with that said, if you come out and you say you're only interested in trying out for a club team, and we say, and you're 15 and you come to tryouts and we realize you're the best person in the gym from 15 to 18, we'll probably give you a call and say, hey, are you sure you just want to do club? But it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your tryouts to try out for multiple levels. It just gives us more options.
Okay.
I see one that just popped up about 12s and 13s being different divisions, and the answer is yes. There is a 12U and a 13U.
Yeah.
So each age group is a different division. If you are interested, if you really want to play with a friend or something, we really recommend that you try out at age for all of those situations and add a note saying you'd like to be considered for the other age group. And we will always look at the situation and see what we can do for you.
Okay. Another one, what are additional costs are associated with travel volleyball outside of the stated fee?
Okay, so we try and I'll tell you a little bit about my story. My daughter, when she started doing sports, was in another sport. It was gymnastics, and this was a while back, so it's not picking on any particular facility or anything like that, but it was, oh, okay, here's your monthly dues, and oh, by the way, here's your uniform costs, and oh, by the way, you have to join the booster club, and oh, by the way, the Heat doesn't have any of that. So the costs that you pay with the club costs are the club costs. So there's the fees that you see in the USAV registration. Then, so those costs are the only ones other than, your own travel costs, your own hotel costs, your own food, lodging, things like that. So none of those are built into the costs for us. All that we let you choose and do that.
Okay. And then we know that the Georgia state semifinals are on October 31st.
Mhm.
If we have any girls who want to try out for that, how will we handle that?
So if you're playing in the state semifinals, let us know, right? If your team makes the state semifinals and you're not going to be there on the 31st, let us know, and we'll make a special adjustment. And I believe the finals are another date. So if there's a team, a local team that makes the state finals, let us know, and we'll work something out. We have an emergency backup date sort of in mind, but we also pretty much know the players that are on those teams, or can watch them. So just communicate and we'll work with you. We're not going to, it's not our goal to cut off, to tell anyone that, oh, because you were in the state semifinals, your team made the high school state semifinals or finals, that you can't play with the Heat. That would be a bad plan. We'll find something. Just communicate.
Okay, and I thought this was a good one for people to hear, especially young people new to the travel. If you have a daughter like on 12U and 13U, if their tournaments are the same weekends, are they traveling together? So
that answer is it depends. It depends a lot. A lot of time for club tournaments, those tournaments wind up being in different locations. Sometimes even if you have two kids playing 14s on different teams at 14 club, last year we had 8 courts of 14 club at our tournament. So that was at 3 different facilities. So that can happen for sure. So if one's playing power and one's playing club, they'll be playing on alternating weekends. That's a benefit, but then they're playing on alternating weekends. So, but yes, it's very possible that, not certainly unless the tournaments are, say, at Rock Hill, where there's a whole bunch of courts in one place. Most tournaments have divisions kind of scattered all over. Like we had 12 or 13 gyms for our club tournament throughout Augusta.
okay. So in an instance, if you have a player who's at one age group, like a 15, tries out for 15s, but wants to be considered at 16s, does she need to come to both tryouts or just let us know?
Plan on staying for the second tryout. So let us know for sure and plan on staying for the second tryout. And we'll work with you, and we'll have a conversation with you after the first day and kind of let you know where you stand and give you a recommendation.
Okay. And what is the usual travel distance for club?
That's a good question. So most of the tournaments that we play are around South Carolina. The most common locations are Columbia. For a club team, there's one in Augusta. There's some in Rock Hill. There's some in Greenville, Spartanburg. The furthest is occasionally there's a Myrtle Beach tournament. I don't know that we have any we're going to in Myrtle Beach this year, but those are the general locations, sometimes Charleston. So generally things are within a 2 to 3 hour radius for club volleyball tournaments, with the exception being Myrtle Beach for us.
That's it for the questions. I've been answering some privately that pertain that way, but that's, I think, most of the ones that have popped up for now.
All right. So if you have any other questions, please let us know, get back with us, shoot us an email, and we look forward to seeing everybody at tryouts. And thank you very much for attending, and we'll go ahead and end the webinar.